Hi, and welcome back to Coffee with the Authors, where we decode the craft and business of writing. And today, I tell a little story which kind of relates more to craft, I guess, than business. Once upon a time, not that long ago, Wendelin and I were on book tour for the 909 Project and the Peach Rebellion. And I remember we were at a store somewhere between here, Colorado, Illinois, and Texas. Not really sure. We did this big giant triangle. Somebody came up and kind of asked, well, what's it about? It's like an elderly gentleman. And I'm like, well, it's a realistic contemporary look at dealing with grief. Because he goes, no, what's it about? So I looked at Wendelin and she held up the Peach Rebellion and said, this is set in 1947 Central Valley of California. And he goes, oh, stop right there. I only read books about World War II. And he just walked away because it wasn't about the thing he wanted to read about. And when you think about it, the actual kind of granular specifics of the plot points within your novel are probably not the most important thing about it. To put it in perspective, think about when maybe your favorite artist, musical artist, puts out a new record. Somebody that you really like, it's either a band or a singer, and you really like them, and you're a fan. And they have a new record that comes out. Do you say, what's it about? In other words, I need to look at the songs and see what the lyrics are so I can tell what they're singing about so I know whether or not I want to buy it. Generally, that's not the case. It's kind of like, well, I love them. I love their vibe. I love their music. I love their voice. And I know if it's done by my favorite artist, I'm probably really going to love the music. Actually, the same thing applies with books. It's also all about the voice. It's their vibe, their sense of life, their kind of take on the world around us. And it's about how you feel at the end of the book. In other words, do you feel positive in some way, shape, or form? Do you feel uplifted or hopeful or happy or whatever? Or do you feel like that story didn't really jive with me and it didn't lift me up and I feel either depressed or I just feel like it was a waste of time? Knowing the specifics of the plot, it's about a guy who has a job and he doesn't like his boss, or that doesn't tell you whether or not you're going to enjoy the book or whether or not it was well written or whether or not the book will kind of comport with your particular sense of life. It doesn't tell you much about it at all. This is why one of my pet peeves are reviews. These are usually user reviews on Goodreads or Amazon where they just rehash the plot. It's a story about a guy and this happens and that happens and he does this and this and this, the end. Did you enjoy the author's take on it? Did you love the book? Did it make you feel a certain way? Did the book feel like real lived experience to you as you read it? Or did it just feel like he was taking a character and pushing them through a bunch of different plot points? Those two things to me are about opposite. To me, a great book, a great work of fiction, feels real to me as I read it and I actually care about the characters and what happens to them. And the other extreme is where the author just uses the character as a chess piece to push through this kind of artificially constructed plot because he has a clever plot he wants to get through. I'm going to probably love the first book regardless of what it's about, and I'm probably going to hate the second book regardless of what it's about. It's kind of gotten to the point where if I'm talking about one of my wife's books and someone asks me what it's about, I just say, it's a Wendelin book. And sometimes they'll kind of get it and go, okay, got it. A lot of times they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, if you read Sammy Keys or you read The Running Dream or you read Flipped or you read Wildbird or you read Swear to Howdy or you read The Peach Rebellion or any of the other ones, and you loved them, something about them worked for you and made you feel a certain way that you enjoyed, then you will like her next book. If you hated those other books, you will hate her newest book. Because even though it's different, it's about something totally different. The plot is going to be very different. It's the same sense of life. It's the same, it's kind of the universal voice, not the character's voice or the specific authorial voice, but the overall sense of life that created that book is the same sense of life that created Flip, that created the Running Dream, that created Runaway or Swear to Howdy or all the rest. It's the same mind. It's the same mindset. It's the same philosophy. Even though the voices may be very different, and some of her books are early middle grade, and some of them are YA and adult. Like The Peach Rebellion really is a book that appeals to adults as much as it does to teens. Yet they all have this commonality, and this is kind of what I'm getting at, is you could take just about any generic plot, give it to a really good author, and say, write a book based on this kind of generic plot that I gave you, and they will write a book that is in keeping with what they normally do. In other words, if Wendelin did that, you would get a Wendelin book. And on the other hand, if you did the opposite, if I took the plot for Wendelin's one of her upcoming books that's not out yet, and I gave it to some random writers and said, this is a plot to a book that's probably going to do really well and critically acclaimed and maybe even be a bestseller. And here you go, here's this plot, and give them kind of a one-page detailed synopsis of what's happening. And they wrote the book. Would it be the same? Not even close. That you can just tell right away. It would be, your brain just tells you, no, it would not be the same at all, even though it hit the same plot points. Sometimes when I'm in a workshop and we're talking about the primacy of authorial voice, I'll say, okay, let's think of a plot. And let's say there's a guy and a girl, or two girls, or a guy and a dragon, whatever. And they work together and they annoy the heck out of each other and they don't get along. And finally they start to realize that, they do get along. But then something happens to tear them apart. Either something internally, there's a miscommunication between them, or maybe exterior forces have torn them apart. Maybe it's the evil boss that's torn them apart and they're no longer working together. But they realize they really do care for each other, and they have to go through a bunch of kind of tough stuff. They have to work hard in order to get back together. But when they finally get back together, they realize they belong together, and there's that big emotional romantic reunion. Okay. That is pretty much the plot to about half the books ever written. So if I gave that plot, I'm talking to a workshop now, if I give that plot to you guys and you all write a book based on that plot, we would have as many different books as we have people in the workshop. They would all be very, very different because you're very, very different writers. So the plot is important, and if there are issues with the plot, you will find out about that from your editor. They will have thoughts about that. But much more important than the plot is that the book feels like real lived experience to the reader. The characters are emotionally compelling. The voice of the character is something that the reader wants to follow to the end of the book and is looking forward to following. And that your book reflects a certain sense of life that your readers have come to know and love. All of these things are so much more important than what's it about? So I urge you to follow your voice, follow your sense of life, and keep writing.